Hello friends, I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So in this particular edition, we are going to discuss some very important articles. The first one being in Thailand-Cambodia agreeing to ceasefire. This particular news important from the perspective of GS2 international relations. Apart from that, places in news from the perspective of prelims is also important. Another important article is about 5 years of NEP taking stock of this transition. Particularly important article from the perspective of GS2 education prelims as well as mains. Another important article is about India's first private test facility for heavy water upgrade opens up. This particular analysis is important from the perspective of GS3 energy, nuclear related updates always important from the perspective of prelims as well. Another important analysis and survey is about India has highest number of slum clusters in flood prone areas. Important analysis, note down some of the data points. You can effectively utilize such surveys data in your mains answers, particularly in GS3. Disaster management answers, GS2, GS1 slum related issues, social justice related issues as well. In the decoded section, we are going to discuss very important analysis of ICJ's advisory opinion on climate change, and it is titled A Compass Not a Verdict. Important analysis from the perspective of GS3 environment. The first important article that we are going to discuss is about Thailand and Cambodia finally agreeing to a ceasefire. So in recent times, we have seen the border dispute between the two countries and the push for ceasefire by the Trump administration. At the same time, current times, the Malaysian Prime Minister also intervened, and both these countries have agreed to a ceasefire now. So, what is the background of the conflict, by the way? It is 817-kilometer border between Cambodia and Thailand, which was drawn by French in 1907. Both countries are predominantly Theravada Buddhist, share ethnic, linguistic, cultural and social similarities, but both claim to be the original owners of their common heritage. This is what drives the animosity between them. Particularly the temples on the border between the two countries, Pre Vihir temple and another important temple is Prasad Ta Muin Thom temple is also a disputed site between the two countries. At the center of the border dispute is obviously Pre Vihir temple, which is called Phra Vihan in Thai. The temple has meaning both as a cultural symbol and a religious place of worship to both people across the borders. So essentially, this is a classic border dispute, but this particular at the center of this particular border dispute is the temple, Pre Vihir temple, which was built by Khmer Empire in 11th, 12th centuries of Cambodia. It is an ancient Hindu temple built by Khmer Empire, located on top of 525-meter cliff in Dang Krek mountains in the Pre Vihir province of Cambodia. Remember the names here, places in news. Pre Vihir is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is 140 km from Angkor Wat and 418 km from Phnom Penh as well. The temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva in the form of Sri Shikareshwar or Lord of the Summit. So you can see the beautiful temple here, which is at the center of the dispute between the two countries. Apart from this particular temple, the article also mentions Angkor Wat temple. So knowing about Angkor Wat temple is also important from the perspective of prelims. Angkor Wat temple is a Hindu-Buddhist temple complex in Cambodia built in 1150 CE by Khmer king Suryavarman II as a Hindu temple dedicated to Vishnu. So Angkor Wat temple is dedicated to Vishnu, but Pre Vihir temple, which is at the center of dispute between the two countries, is dedicated to Lord Shiva. Remember that. It was later converted into Buddhist temple by the end of 12th century. It is one of the largest religious structures in the world and prime example of Khmer architecture as well. The Angkor area was declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site way back in 1992. So you can see the beautiful complex of Angkor Wat here. Both these temples are important from the perspective of prelims. So know some basics of both these temples at the same time. But from the perspective of prelims, the mapping here is of crucial importance. So Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN in particular, the bordering countries of China, whether Cambodia and Thailand borders China or not, this is also important fact to know. Both these countries doesn't border China. You can see Thailand here and Cambodia here. Both of these countries share the land border, but they doesn't share land border with China. You can see the Chinese border countries, means just from the sake of mapping here, let's look at how many countries borders China. China borders 14 countries Which are these countries, by the way? There is Afghanistan, there is Bhutan, there is India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nepal, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan and Vietnam. But Cambodia and Thailand does not have land border with China. Remember that. This particular fact is very, very vital. And also remember some of the seas around the South China Sea itself. You can see the South China Sea and the disputed region here. There is Andaman Sea, there is Celebes Sea, there is Philippine Sea, which is Java Sea is there. You can see all these seas, and at the same time also locate the capital cities of all the ASEAN countries. You may get a question in prelims to arrange these capital cities from north to south or south to north or clockwise or anti-clockwise. So, know the locations of capital cities as well. So, important from the perspective of again prelims, the mapping is very, very vital. You may get a definite question in this regard in the prelims. So, this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So, we have briefly discussed the issue here. So, that particular analysis, this much is enough for you. Do not go too deep into this particular border dispute. This much information is enough from the perspective of prelims as well as mains. Remember that. Another important article that we are going to discuss is about 5 years of NEP, taking stock of the transition. So, to what extent we have transitioned towards achieving the full implementation of NEP is important from the perspective of GS2 education, prelims as well as mains. 5 years after its approval, the NEP 2020 has led to some changes in classrooms aiming to reform school and higher education. However, much of its vision remains unimplemented due to center-state friction and institutional delays. So, education being in a concurrent subject, oftentimes states oppose the top-down implementation of education policies by the center. So, NEP is one of the casualty of this tussle between the center and state as well, but it has good intentions and it has brought a revolution in the school as well as higher education scenario. So, you can see some of the highlights of the NEP 2020 policy. Already, we have discussed this particular issue so many times. So, the implementation and the transition part is very, very important. So, what has worked when it comes to the implementation of NEP? School curriculum is changing slowly. The 10+2 system has been replaced with new structure of foundational up to class 2, then pre-preparatory class 3 to 5, then middle 6 to 8 and then secondary 9 to 12. In 23, the National Curriculum Framework for School Education laid out the learning outcomes and competencies for each stage. At the same time, NCERT has produced new textbooks for class 1 to 8. On this framework, social sciences is now taught as a single book covering history, geography, political science, economics, replacing separate textbook for each subject. First step of early childhood learning is also is the thing which has worked in favor of NEP. The NEP aims to make pre-primary learning universal by 2030. So, this is the primary aim here. NCERT Jadui Pitara learning kits are already in use, and the Women and Child Development Ministry has issued national ECCE curriculum as well. Delhi, Karnataka, Kerala will enforce the minimum age of 6 for class 1 admission. This has likely caused a drop in class 1 enrollments from 2.16 crore to 1.87 crore in 2023-24. Around 73% of enrolled children had attended preschool. Key challenges include training Anganwadi workers, enhancing infrastructure and teaching quality in early education centers. So, our goal of early childhood education and the achievement of full pre-primary learning by 2030 is on track. National focus for foundational skills. So, the Nipun Bharat is the scheme which was launched in 2021, which seeks to ensure every child can read and do basic math by the end of class 3. So, this particular scheme is important here. A recent government survey showed average scores of 64% in language and 60% in math, indicating progress but falling short of universal proficiency. So, we have some distance to cross in this regard. Credit-based flexibility starts to take shape. The NEP's push for credit-based flexibility is underway through Academic Bank of Credit, ABC and National Credit Framework. Students can digitally earn, store and transfer credits across institutions, allowing flexible course entry, exit and re-entry. They can obtain a certificate after 1 year or a diploma after 2 or a 4-year degree at the same time. The National Curricular Framework extends to schools, converting learning hours into credits with CBSE piloting the system. Common test for college entry. The Common University Entrance Test CUET, introduced way back in 2022, has become a central mechanism for undergraduate admissions. It aligns with NEP 2020 recommendation to replace multiple college entrance exams with a single standardized national test. So, CUET is operational and it is working fine for the college admissions, Indian campuses abroad and vice versa. So, many IITs have opened the campuses. For example, IIT Madras has opened its outside campus, abroad campus in Zanzibar. IIT Delhi has done the same for Abu Dhabi. IIM Ahmedabad has opened in Dubai as well. Foreign universities are also actually coming to India. The University of Southampton in recent times opened a campus in India. There are interest of foreign universities to open campus in GIFT City as well. So, what's in progress? So, what is in progress in this regard? Changes in board exams, twice a year exams. From 2026, CBSE will allow class 10 students to take board exams twice annually. Karnataka has already tested this approach and other boards are also observing its impact. Subject level flexibility. NEP's idea of offering all subjects at 2 levels, standard and higher, is limited to class 10 math, which CBSE introduced in 2019 and 20 as well. Holistic report cards so far on paper. Parak, a unit under NCERT, has developed progress cards that go beyond marks and includes peer and self-assessment, but some school boards are yet to make the shift. So, these are some of the issues or initiatives in progress. Slow progress for 4-year PG degree. Central universities are rolling out NEP's idea of 4-year undergraduate degrees with multiple exit options, and Kerala has followed. But in many places, colleges don't have the faculty or the infrastructure to implement 4-year degree program actually recommended by NEP. Mother tongue in classrooms. NEP encourages the use of mother tongue as the medium of instruction till at least 5. CBSE has asked schools to begin this from pre-primary to class 2 with classes 3 to 5 retaining the option for staying or switching. NCERT is working on textbooks in more Indian languages as well. What is stuck and why? So, what are some of the recommendations which are stuck and why? 3-language formula, which is one of the recommendation of the NEP. NEP proposed 3 languages in school, at least 2 of them Indian, but Tamil Nadu, which follows a Tamil-English model, sees this as an attempt of Hindi imposition. Teacher education overhaul. The national curriculum framework for teacher education, due in 2021, is yet to be released. 4-year integrated B.Ed course has been launched under the integrated teacher education program. Resistance is coming from colleges already offering courses like Bachelor of Elementary Education, who are pushing back against this particular change when it comes to teacher education overhaul. UGC's proposed successor delayed. A 2018 draft will propose replacing UGC Act with Higher Education Commission of India. The NEP formalized this idea as assigned HECI roles in regulation, funding, accreditation, academic standards, which excluded medical and legal education, by the way, but the Education Ministry is still to draft the final bill. So, HECI is an idea whose time has come, but the Education Ministry is yet to draw the final bill. No breakfast in schools yet. NEP recommended breakfast along with midday meals, but in 2021, the Finance Ministry rejected the Education Ministry's proposal to add breakfast for pre-primary and elementary classes. So, this particular policy hasn't been accepted. Policy divide between center and states. State opposition is there. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal refused to sign MOUs for PM Shri schools opposing mandatory NEP adoption. Tamil Nadu's concern on 3-language formula is well known. Constitutional argument. Kerala and Tamil Nadu also argue that education is on the concurrent list, so the center can't impose changes unilaterally. Funding dispute is also there. Center withheld Samagra Shiksha Fund, citing non-compliance with NEP forms in recent times. Tamil Nadu has challenged this in the Supreme Court. Karnataka's stance is also interesting here. Implemented and later scrapped the 4-year UG model, now drafting its own state education policy. So, there are multiple issues when it comes to the full implementation or adoption of NEP across the country, but it has actually brought big revolution when it comes to school education and higher education at the same time. But we are yet to actually implement some of the provisions effectively. So, this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains GS2 education. Another important article is about India's first private test facility for heavy water upgrade opens up. So Tema India, Mumbai-based company, has been tasked with testing equipment for upgrading depleted heavy water essential for pressurized heavy water reactors. This marks the first time India's nuclear sector has involved private players in a process previously managed by Bhabha Atomic Research Center. So BARC earlier used to handle this particular issue, but this particular company, Tema India, a Mumbai-based company in particular, has been now involved in the upgrading of the heavy water facility. Tema India's test facility is located in Achhad, Palghar district near Mumbai. It will manufacture equipment such as distillation columns and integrate and test them before sending them to reactor sites for installation. The facility was developed under technology transfer from BARC and a purchase order from Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. Tema India offers a single point solution for heavy water upgrading, reducing the process time by 1 to 2 years. Earlier, the distillation columns and modules used to be manufactured by other vendors, then assembled and tested by BARC, which will take at least 7 to 8 years time. So essentially, due to such facility being opened up for the private sector now, this particular timeline will be reduced by at least 1 to 2 years. The company will supply equipment for 4 reactors at Gorakhpur, Haryana and 2 at Kaiga as well. It has also supplied the test distillation column sections for deployment at Rawatphata nuclear power plant in Rajasthan as well. So, upgradation of heavy water. So, pressurized heavy water reactors need heavy water obviously, and over the period of time, the purity of heavy water reduces. For effective use, D2O, that is heavy water, must be 99.9% pure, but it gets diluted over time with the regular water. That's why the distillation process is very important. The distillation process is used to upgrade depleted D2O back to the required purity of 99.9% almost. So, essentially, that's why this particular facility is important. So, let's look at some of the basics of nuclear energy now. India aims to achieve 100 gigawatt of nuclear energy capacity by 2047. The short-term goal is to reach 22.4 gigawatt by 2032. Currently, 24 nuclear reactors are operational with total capacity of 8780 megawatt. In 2015 in particular, the government approved 10 new reactors. One is operational and the rest 13.6 gigawatt are under construction. A 20,000 crore nuclear energy mission has been launched to develop small modular reactors in recent times, and we have gone through that particular update in our DNA episodes as well. You can effectively see some of the operational nuclear power plants in India, very famous operational nuclear power plants. There is Narora, which is in UP, there is Rajasthan, there is Kakrapar in Gujarat, Tarapur in Maharashtra, Kaiga particularly in Karnataka. You can see Kudankulam, very famous nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu in collaboration with Russia in particularly. Madras Atomic Power Plant, Kalpakkam is also there. So, these are some of the famous operational nuclear power plants in India. But let's see some basics of heavy water. So, what exactly is the heavy water? Heavy water, D2O or deuterium oxide, is made up of 2 atoms of deuterium and 1 atom of oxygen. Obviously, see, water's formula, you must be knowing this, H2O, but heavy water is a D2O. So, essentially, deuterium is a stable isotope of hydrogen with double the mass of hydrogen due to presence of an extra neutron in its nucleus. The deuterium is present in hydrogen and hydrogen bearing compounds like water, hydrocarbons, etc., and has a small natural occurrence of about 140 to 160 ppm as well. So, in normal water, naturally also D2O occurs. Why? Because deuterium in itself is a stable isotope of hydrogen. So, isotope, same atomic number but different mass number. Remember this particular definition here. In deuterium particularly, it has extra neutron. Heavy water displays similar physical and chemical properties but differs in nuclear properties when compared to ordinary water, which makes it an extremely efficient material for use as a moderator and coolant in pressurized heavy water reactors. So, D2O, heavy water, is effectively used as a moderator and coolant in pressurized heavy water reactors. A small quantity of heavy water is not harmful to human health. In fact, human body contains few grams of heavy water as natural abundance. Small quantities of heavy water have been used in clinical studies and treatment in infants as well, lactating women, adults without any reported adverse effect. Toxic effects of heavy water begin to appear only when deuterium content of body fluids exceed 20%, which is the most unlikely event. So, heavy water in itself, if ingested, is not harmful, but if the concentration gets increased in our body, then it becomes a toxic. So, essentially, what exactly is the coolant and what is moderator in pressurized heavy water reactor? By the way, heat energy produced in the core of a reactor due to fission reaction is required to be carried away by coolant. Heavy water is used as a primary coolant to transport heat generated by the fission reaction to secondary coolant, that is essentially a light water. The light water takes the heat energy from the heavy water and generates steam at an appropriate pressure for running steam turbines. Steam turbines drive generator to generate electricity. So, what is moderator? By the way, moderator is required in nuclear reactor to slow down the neutrons produced during the fission reaction so that the chain reaction can be sustained. Heavy water is an excellent moderator due to its high moderating ratio and low absorption cross section for neutrons. So, why heavy water is used as a moderator in fission reactors like PHWR, pressurized heavy water reactors? Because it is an excellent moderator due to its high moderating ratio and low absorption cross section for neutrons. Remember this particular fact here. So, this is just the structure of pressurized heavy water reactor. Essentially, it uses heavy water, deuterium oxide, as a both coolant and moderator. It utilizes natural uranium as a fuel, which doesn't require enrichment. So, it utilizes natural uranium as a fuel, but it which doesn't require enrichment. The heavy water is pressurized to allow for higher operating temperatures without boiling. Heat generated by nuclear fission is transferred to the heavy water coolant, which then heats a separate water system to produce steam, which then drives the turbines to generate the electricity. You can effectively see the moderator and coolant, the working here. I am not going to explain this particular working due to time paucity. This is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Important article from the perspective of prelims. So, for the first time, the private sector has been effectively involved in such upgrading facility of heavy water. So, important news from the perspective of GS3 energy. Another important article from the perspective of prelims as well as mains is India having the highest number of slum clusters in flood prone areas. A new study on vulnerability of some slum clusters has recently opened up this particular issue. Flooding events are major hazard worldwide. According to 2024 Moody's report, more than 2.3 billion people are exposed to flooding every year. Remember or note down some of the data points here. The Moody's report of 2024 says more than 2.3 billion people are exposed to flooding every year all over the world. In India, more than 600 million people are at risk due to coastal or inland flooding. However, there is a lack of comprehensive data on vulnerable communities' flood exposure risk, especially in Global South. So, new study highlighted, which was by the way published in Nature Cities, India has the largest number of slum dwellers, 158 million plus, on the floodplains, with most of them concentrated in naturally flood prone delta of the Ganga river. South Asia has the highest concentration of people in flood prone informal settlements. North India leads in absolute numbers, followed by Indonesia, Bangladesh and Pakistan. Other significant hotspots include Rwanda, northern Morocco, coastal Rio de Janeiro as well. In the Global South, 33% of informal settlements, about 445 million people, are in areas which are already exposed to flooding. So, the flooding issue and the slumification in this regard, the data is very vital from the perspective of say urbanization. If you can effectively utilize such data points in your main sensors on urbanization. Vulnerability factors are also important. Slum dwellers are 32% more likely to live in floodplains due to low land costs and housing inaccessibility. Also, the regulation is an issue here. Settlements often occur near job centers despite high flood risks. Informal housing is fragile, tin sheet, tent or tarp with poor services and no formal land rights. So, that is encroachment on the floodplain. Essentially, lack of flood insurance, education and infrastructure worsen vulnerability in the global south. Real estate influence is also observed. Developers avoid flood prone zones, pushing migrants and the poor into high risk areas like that of in Bengaluru. So, in Bengaluru particularly, you can see this particular phenomena. So, that is why to address this particular issue, we need to heed the call to action. Need action before the 2030 SDG deadline, especially on poverty, housing, water and climate goals. So, if India has to achieve these particular sustainable development goals, it has to address this particular very pressing problem. Taking a human-centric approach instead of location-focused to improve the inadequate infrastructure, need for the government to collaborate with communities instead of relying heavily on traditional disaster preparedness, skill improvement in areas like sanitation, waste management, installing drainage systems could enhance the resilience as well. You can see some of the sustainable development goals, particularly 17 sustainable goals here. Number 1 is no poverty. Number 2, you can see zero hunger. Number 3, good health and well-being. Number 4, quality education is there. So, just actually you must know each and every sustainable development goals by heart. Remember that you can utilize this particular bit here, the sustainable development goals, particularly effectively in your conclusion of the answers. So, when it comes to flood prone areas, what is the situation? Approximately 12% of India's land area is vulnerable to flooding according to the recent estimates of Central Water Commission. You can effectively see some of the flood prone areas here. This includes both riverine urban floods affecting densely populated and agriculturally important regions such as Indo-Gangetic plains, parts of Assam, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal and coastal states as well. When it comes to flood management, NDMA guidelines are also important to know. Early warning and preparedness, strengthen real-time flood forecasting via CWC and IMD, develop community-based early warning systems. Structural measures are also there. Non-structural measures like enforce zoning regulations and floodplain mapping, prepare flood hazard atlas using GIS and remote sensing satellites. Response and relief is also there. Establish emergency operation centers, deploy SDRF, civil defense, ensure shelters and health support as well. Capacity building, train officials, local bodies and conduct mock drills. So, these are some of the recommendations of NDMA from the perspective of disaster management and how the floods are managed. Some of the points here are important. So, note down some of these points. Public awareness is another. Post flood recovery is also focused. Institutional coordination, align the efforts of NDMA, SDMAs, CWC and IMD with local bodies. Funding utilizes SDRF and NDRF and convergence with central sector schemes. So, some of these are the recommendations of NDMA guidelines essentially to manage the floods effectively. So, this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. In the decoded section, we are going to discuss important analysis from the perspective of again GS3 environment in the wake of recent ICJ unanimously declaring climate change an existential threat. The advisory opinion in this regard is very vital. Recently, the International Court of Justice issued unanimous advisory opinion declaring climate change an existential threat, sparking global discussions beyond traditional policy circles. The case was initiated by Vanuatu, a small Pacific island nation which in March 2023 led a coalition of small island states to secure consensual approval from the United Nations General Assembly to ask the ICJ 2 questions. So, this particular case which was initiated by Vanuatu asked 2 very important questions to ICJ for its opinion. What legal obligations do states have to combat climate change and what are the legal consequences if they fail to meet these obligations? So, in recent times ICJ gave its opinion verdict in favor of the arguments given by Vanuatu and other Pacific Islander countries itself. India's participation in the case is also important. Over 130 countries joined as a co-sponsors. India did not join, but also did not oppose as well. These cautious postures reflect India's complex position in global climate diplomacy. India's hesitation is based on pragmatic realism and per se not due to lack of commitment. As a developing country, India is still working to ensure universal access to electricity, healthcare and employment. Per capita emissions of India remains low and many citizens rely on biomass and on irregular power supply. India has not benefited from historical fossil fuel driven industrialization unlike developed nation. But despite all these things, India did not oppose the verdict. India's climate efforts in this regard are also appreciable. Targets 50% electricity from renewables by 2030, achieved a decline in emissions intensity and expansion of afforestation, promoted electric buses in major cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, etc., leads the International Solar Alliance and Mission Life at the same time. During its G20 presidency, India highlighted climate finance as a priority as well. Global comparison, when it comes to global comparison, India has done more with fewer resources, showing ambition as well as responsibility. Canada emits 7%, 7 times more per capita and is expanding its oil sands at the same time. While on the other hand, Australia profits from coal exports while setting modest climate goals. So, despite India per se not involved in this advisory opinion, despite that India has achieved so much of its commitments under the Paris goal. ICJ's advisory opinion and its implications now are also important to know. Though not legally binding, ICJ's opinion has a serious normative weight. It draws from climate treaties, UN Charter, customary international law, law of the sea and human rights laws. The court affirms that states have obligation to prevent environmental harm, reduce emissions and to adapt to climate impacts and cooperate internationally. These duties are no longer moral appeals, they now carry a legal weight internationally. Recognition of human rights violations. Climate change is recognized as violating the right to life, right to health and right to housing internationally now. States must act based on the best available science, adopt ambitious national plans and may be legally compelled to strengthen them as well. Failure to act could invite claims for climate change now. Subsidies for polluting fuels are now under legal scrutiny as well. Strengthens India's long-standing arguments. Despite India not participating in the proceedings, this particular advisory position of ICJ will strengthen India's long-standing commitments. What are those commitments? It affirms the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. 1. Support India's stance that historical emitters must do more. Bolsters negotiating power of developing countries in a climate diplomacy as well. What are the policy changes and measures needed to be adopted by India? Legal preparedness. Indian courts already link the environment to the right to life. The ICJ opinion may trigger increased climate litigation. At the same time, it could involve demands for strong action or compensation. Potential lawsuits may come from within India or from affected neighboring island states as well. India needs to anticipate claims and clarify legal standards to prevent chaotic litigation. So, India needs to give clarity when it comes to legal aspects of this particular ICJ's advisory opinion now. Enforcement capacity. Environmental laws exist but are weakly implemented. Pollution control agencies are underfunded and enforcement is inconsistent across different states and act sectors. ICJ stresses due diligence. India must strengthen its regulatory capacity urgently. Fossil fuel subsidies are also under risk now. Crucial for poor household LPG kerosene but hinders clean energy transition. ICJ ruling essentially includes remark by Judge Dalveer Bhandari of India, who warns of legal and fiscal implications of such subsidies. India must redesign support systems without promoting polluting fuels. It requires innovation and financing in this regard. Diplomatic challenges may also emerge. India must continue taking climate action while defending the context of its developmental needs. Climate justice must not become new form of injustice for the developing and underdeveloped countries at the same time. The ICJ opinion in this regard serve as a guiding framework, marking the shift from voluntary climate efforts to binding responsibilities. For India, it calls for balancing climate duty with national dignity and aligning ambitious actions with principle of justice. So, India needs to forge its own path when it comes to sustainable development. At the same time, enforcing the ICJ's advisory opinion will create some unique legal obligations now in the wake of this particular advisory opinion on climate change. So, important analysis from the perspective of GS3 environment. This is the practice question for you, important from the perspective of, as I said, GS3 environment. You may get a question directly on this particular advisory. That's it from my side, and stay tuned for another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.